Without water, a human being is dead in 3 days. Now imagine the river is gone. For most of the late Pleistocene, bands of hunter-gatherers built their entire year around water. Rivers, springs, seasonal pools, they knew exactly where each one was. Then, over years and sometimes decades, the rains simply did not return. The rivers shrank, the pools dried to mud, and the mud cracked. These were not single bad seasons. Isotopic and pollen records from East Africa and the Levant show arid episodes lasting decades, sometimes longer than a human lifetime. A band of 20 or 30 people needs water every single day. When the nearest source dries up, the calculation becomes very simple and very brutal. Here is something remarkable. The stress your body goes through as a child gets written permanently into your teeth, not as a memory, as chemistry. Isotopic analysis of oxygen and strontium in ancient teeth from sites across East Africa and the Near East shows the same pattern repeatedly: childhood growth interrupted by severe dehydration stress. These are not abstract numbers. Each disrupted growth line in that enamel is a child who went without water long enough for their body to stop developing normally. The signal appears at multiple sites, from the Rift Valley in Kenya to burial grounds in the Levant, which tells us this was not one unlucky group. It was a regional pattern tied to climate. And it is not only the teeth. Skeletal trauma rates, healed fractures, stress injuries, rise measurably during the same climatically arid phases recorded in the sediment record. When archaeologists map late Paleolithic campsites across arid regions, something immediately stands out. The camps are not spread evenly across the landscape. They cluster around fault lines, limestone outcrops, and the beds of rivers that had already gone dry. These are the geological features that hold water longest when everything else is gone. Limestone is porous. Water seeps through it slowly and can persist in hollows and caves long after surface sources have vanished entirely. Dry riverbeds are deceptive. The surface is sand and dust, but dig down half a meter and water often still moves beneath. Slow, hidden, but there. Plot those campsite locations on a geological map, and the pattern is almost perfect. The bands were not wandering randomly. They were following a mental map of the rock beneath their feet. This knowledge, which ridge holds a seep, which bend in a dead river still has moisture, was not written down. It was spoken, demonstrated, memorized across generations. A healthy adult moving through heat can survive roughly 3 days without water. In direct sun carrying a load, that window is shorter. Researchers have measured the spacing between late Paleolithic refuge sites in arid zones. In several regions, that spacing sits right at the edge of what a person can physically cover before dehydration becomes incapacitating. When a band cannot reach the next water source as a group, it fragments. Faster individuals push ahead. Slower ones, the elderly, the very young, fall behind. The band stops being a band. Some of those fragments never reassembled. The archaeological record shows bands that simply disappear from a region during the most severe arid phases. No gradual decline, just absence. Children and older adults dehydrate faster. Their physiological margin is narrower. In a drought crossing, they were the first to reach the limit and the hardest to carry. Skeletal evidence suggests that when water became scarce enough, violence followed. Healed weapon injuries cluster in the same time layers as the driest sediment records. Here is the part nobody expects. Drought did not only destroy, it also forced something that would not have happened otherwise: contact. Two bands that had never shared territory, never traded, never spoken the same words, suddenly standing at the only water source for 100 kilometers. Sometimes that meeting ended in violence. The skeletal record confirms it. But sometimes it did not. And when it did not, something else began. Tool styles that appear in one region suddenly show up hundreds of kilometers away during arid phases. Not because people migrated, because they met at the last water and traded what they knew. Genetic studies of ancient populations show mixing events that align with these same arid periods. Drought pushed strangers together. Some of them stayed together. Drought may have been the single environmental pressure most likely to either erase a band entirely or force it into contact with people it would never otherwise have met. Both outcomes changed everything. Every war, every alliance, every migration route in the deep human past. Trace it back far enough, and somewhere near the beginning, there is a question of where the water was. The land was enormous, the water was not, and everything that happened next depended entirely on who found it first. If this changed how you think about your ancestors, subscribe. There is a lot more where that came from.